Hey, church. Three of you excited. Great. Glad you're with us. Glad you're joining us online. I want to give a special shout out to our Gold Star Academy who is here with us today. If we could welcome them. Just great looking people, most of them. What you may not know is that some of our Gold Star Academy boys are actually the carpenters who created our brand new bench that's sitting out here that was donated to us by the Champion Project, one of our favorite ministry partners here. So make sure you check that out and tell them thank you for them and their mentors and their handiwork. Y'all did a great job. Let's clap for that too. Go sit on it. It's a great bench. Top 10 bench in the Woodlands, I promise. So a couple of nights ago, I got in from mowing the lawn, and my very pregnant wife was sitting on the couch. And as soon as I walked in the back door and looked at her, she put her phone down and then hid it. Now, there's full trust. We've been married over 8 years. We're about to have our third child together. I'm not too worried, but I also wanted to know, what are you doing on your phone? And why'd you hide it from me? And so I said, well, sweetheart, what are you doing on your phone? She said, don't worry about it. I said, no, really, what are you doing on your phone? She said, don't worry about it. And I said, well, now I'm worried about it, sweetheart. What are you doing on your phone? And she said, really, you don't need to know. And so then my mind begins racing a little bit. Is it TikTok, right? Not allowed in the Lumpee household. Are you on TikTok? Are you on Amazon? I don't know which one's worse. Amazon, are you on Tinder? Like, what are you doing? And she said, no, it's none of those things. Babe, you really don't need to know. And I said, no, now I want to know. She said, fine. You really want to see what's going on? I said, yes, I want to see what you're doing on your phone. And so she uncovers it and shows it to me, and it's the stopwatch app. And so I'm like, why are you timing how long it takes me to do the lawn? Like, do I take longer doing that than I have to get away from the house and the screaming? Maybe, but you don't need to know that. You don't need a time. She said, no, I'm not timing how long it's taken to do the yard, but don't worry about it. And then my very small brain begins wondering and thinking, what is she timing? And I lean over to her and I said, Alex Lumpee, are you timing contractions right now? And she said, don't worry about it. So when people are asking me, hey, how close are you to number 3 coming along? That's the story I tell them, that we are in that mode. If you see me run off the stage, that's what's happening, okay? And it will be a short sermon, which you would like. But that's how close we are. It could be any day. And because we're at that kind of any day stage, we're beginning to think back and reflect on the arrival of our older 2 daughters. So about a year ago, I gave you all the gory details about the delivery of our oldest daughter, Grayson. You remember the Cliff Notes version is that we were living in College Station, needed to deliver in Katy, and that was all fine and good, except we were trying to drive down in the end of August, beginning of September 2017, which is when a little thing called Hurricane Harvey blew in. And so that was a very traumatic experience for all of us involved. We still had the child. She still had the child. I was there. Everything ended up okay, but in the meantime, it was very, very stressful and chaotic. So after that experience with baby 1, we said, we're not going to let that happen with baby 2. And so we began kind of researching our different options, and we came across this phrase that came straight from the gates of heaven, I'm sure, and it's the phrase scheduled induction. Now, I've explained this concept to a few, I don't call people older. I learned in church world that's not very nice. So more seasoned individuals, particularly seasoned mothers, and I tell them about this magical thing called the scheduled induction, and they say, we didn't have it that way. And then they tell me their long stories about trying to rush to the hospital, everything going chaotic. I hear all that, but I get that, so I'm gonna do it. So we said, scheduled induction, that sounds great. And so really, this was incredible. She met with her doctor, and we were a couple of weeks out, and she said, all right, let me look at my calendar, let me look at the hospital schedule, kind of like a hotel, and we'll find a time for you to come check in and have your baby. Great, right? And so sure enough, she looks at her calendar, she says, okay, how does Monday at 8 p.m. sound? We said, that sounds delightful. And so that gave us some time. We knew when the baby was coming. And so we made sure that my mom came down from Fort Worth and got set up with the oldest. We made sure that we had air in the tires, and we got all our bags packed, that everything was just right. We knew how we were getting to the hospital. It was gonna be a breeze. Now here's the deal, I don't do traffic. I've lived in the Woodlands almost 2 years now. I've been on 45 maybe a dozen times, okay? I avoid traffic at all costs. And so We had to be in Katy by 8, and I said, sweetheart, it's gonna take a while to get there. Let's leave early. Okay, I'm getting to the airport like 6 hours early. I said, we're not gonna get that early, but let's leave a little bit early. And so we left early. Everything was ready to go. We drive down, we get down to Katy pretty early, and we see that one of our favorite restaurants, Whiskey Cake, is right down there by the hospital. So I said, let's do dinner. And so we sit down, we have an amazing dinner. We have appetizers and entree. We split a dessert on top of all of that. Some of our friends' parents were there from College Station. They saw us, we said, we're going to have a baby. And they said, that's awesome, we're paying for your dinner. And we said, fantastic, got a free meal out of it, folks. This is the dream, and we still have time. We get done eating with dessert, and I look down at the watch, and it's 6:30. We have an hour and a half. And so I said, babe, we got an hour and a half. What do you want to do? She said, I don't know. What do you want to do? And see, I'm a planner. I'm a type A kind of guy, so I've planned this out. And I said, well, the way I see it, we have one of three options. I said, number one, Katy Mills Mall is just right across the highway. We could go there. We could walk around. You could pick out a nice blouse or something. You know, I'll buy you that. Dinner got paid for, so I got some money. We can do that, or we could go walk around the mall. And she said, sweetheart, I'm 9.5 months pregnant. I don't want to walk. I said, that's fair. That's option one. I said, hey, option two, you know, the hospital's just down the road. We could maybe just check. We could just go sit in the lobby till we could check in. Maybe they have a room ready a little bit early for us. But in the meantime, we could sit into the lobby and look lovingly into each other's eyes and just remember how much we love each other. And she said, absolutely not. That sounds terrible. And so I said, look, then we got the third option here, and this is kind of a wild idea, but I said, just down the road, kind of the hospital's in between it, but I think, we have enough time. There's a little place down the road called Topgolf, and how do you feel about that? So this is my wife, 12 hours before giving birth, swinging a 9-iron. Now, her balls went further than mine, but she has the strength of 2 humans in that picture, so it was not a fair fight. At least that's what I told myself at night. This is 12 hours before we had the baby. Then sure enough, we get done with Topgolf. Everything's amazing. We go to the car. We drive to the hospital. We walk up with our bags just straight up to the reception desk. We said, we're here to have a baby. And they said, congratulations, you're checking in. We said, we're checking in. They said, great. They showed us up to our room. She got the epidural as quick as possible. And bam, 12 hours later, have a baby. Now, compare that to the chaos of trying to have a baby in the middle of Hurricane Harvey. I would prefer the second birth, right? Because maybe it's just me, but I'm a little bit of a controlling guy. So you better believe that as baby number 3 is arriving, that on Thursday, hallelujah, we're gonna schedule an induction and everything's gonna go just as I planned. Don't you laugh at me, get behind me. Because here's what I do know, is that this is just part of my nature. If I had it my way, I would control exactly what time we would get to the hospital, what time that baby would be born, after how many pushes, what she would be entered into the world, the kind of music that was playing, her first book, how often and how long she would nap. I would definitely control who was allowed in the room and for how long. I would control all of those things. In case you haven't figured this out, my name's Daniel. I'm a control freak, okay? And that's the idol that we are talking about today in this installation of our sermon series, Holy Cow, the idol of control. It's that urge that many of us have to be masters of not only our own domain, but everybody else's too. That we want things to go right, and we know that we can get things done right, and so we're gonna step in and we're gonna control it all. Now, what we said about the rest of the idols in the series is true about the idol of control. And that's in moderation, control is not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing. It's good to plan. It's good to have to-do lists. It's good to predict things about the future and predict how you will adapt to them when and if they come. All of that is very good in moderation. But if the way you operate, if the way you think about your life is that you are in control, then you might be worshiping at the throne of the idol of control. So what we said about all the idols during this series, if this is your first time with us, what I've argued is that the idols that we're talking about in this series are different than the idols that we find in the Bible. In the Bible, idols are often statues or poles or paintings or figurines that people worship. And what I've said is hopefully that is not your story. I pray to God it's not your story. But more than likely, you have an idol of some sort, something that you put in the throne of God, something that you worship without realizing that you're worshiping it. And what we've argued is that there are really two types of categories, two subcategories of modern idols. I've said there's source idols that are underneath that are feeding what we've called surface idols. Okay, and the reason I call it surface idols and the reason I talk about it so much is because I love doing this hand motion, right? There's the source idols and then there's the surface idols that manifest themselves. And control is a source idol. It manifests itself in many different ways. And here's what the idolater who worships control deep down believes. Life only has meaning and I only have value if I am able to get mastery over my life in the area of fill in the blank. Life only has meaning. I only feel like I am a valuable human being if I can get mastery over the area of my life that is blank. I only feel worthwhile and valuable if I have control over my job, if I have control over my family, if I have control over my finances. Now, what happens is that control freaks like me, people who worship at the idol of control, we will sacrifice relationships to this idol. Because here's the deal, if I'm sitting alone in my room, I can control myself. But the moment I enter somebody else into the picture, I can't control what you're thinking. I can't control what you're doing. I can't control what you're thinking about me. And so I would much rather not even enter into that relationship at all because that risks me being out of control. Idolaters of this sort will also sacrifice spontaneity. Okay, we don't like surprise parties. We want to see them coming. We won't be spontaneous because spontaneity, pick somewhere to go eat, sounds terrifying. This is what's underneath a lot of surface idols. So the surface idol is a good way to think of how this control idol might manifest itself. It is very simple. How do you act on vacations? Okay, listen with your ears, not with your elbows. Do you show up to the airport 6 hours early? Do you have every meal planned? Do you have it planned when you are going to see sights and for how long? Do you have sleep and nap built into the schedule? Or are you a monster, okay? What kind of person are you? Do you just show up on a vacation that you spend a bunch of money on and say, we're gonna let the wind take us wherever? If we go to the beach, we go to the beach. If we go eat, we go eat. We're on vacation and we don't have a time frame. Yes, you do, sweetheart, okay? How do you act on vacations might reveal whether or not you have an idol problem with control. Or another way is in the workplace. Are you a micromanager? Now, I believe that every office has a micromanager. It's the kind of person who comes in at first, wants to show you how to do things, and then decides they can do it better themselves because that's the mantra of a control freak. If I want it done right, I saw that elbow, if I want it done right, I'll do it myself. Right? This is our mantra. And so I believe that every single workplace has a micromanager. Tough truth time, you ready? If you're thinking to yourself, I really don't think my office has a micromanager. I can't think of anybody. Yeah, it's you. I had to realize this for myself. At my previous church, I ran kind of an internship program, and I had an intern who was young and excited and a great guy. And he one time came to me. He'd been working with me for about a year, and he came into my office. He said, "Hey, man, you got a second?" And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And he said, "Listen, man, tough conversation. I just feel like you're giving me a lot of responsibilities and a lot of tasks. And then I find out that you come over top and you fix everything that I did and redo it in the way that you want it to." And he said, "Just because I love you and respect you, I just want to let you know you might be a micromanager." And I said a couple of things. I said, "Hey, thanks so much for that. I don't think you're right. I may have some micromanagers tendencies, but that's not really me." And then I said, "Hey, also just next time you come into my office to bring a concern, maybe here's how the way you want to handle this. It's going to be different." Now, that's almost a true story. But I've realized I have that tendency within me. Another way the source idol of control might bubble itself up is in anger. It's in anger. If you really try to grip to the control that you don't really have and things don't go your way, you respond in rage. You're shocked, you're surprised that it didn't happen the way that you thought it would happen, and the only natural response you have is anger. Now, let me say this. I know in my own experience, in my controlling nature, really the number one place that I've heard, that I've felt this idol bubble up to the surface is with anxiety. So here at Loft, we talk about anxiety and depression a lot for a whole lot of reasons. One of those is that if the statistics are true, and I believe that they are true, that each and every one of you that can hear my voice either struggles with depression, has struggled with depression, or you love somebody that does. Okay, this is just a common modern experience, unfortunately, that we have. So I believe that we need to talk about it and talk through what it means. And so what I found is that in my controlling nature, one of the reasons that I struggle with anxiety is because I live in the question, what if? I live asking the what if, because I think that's a faithful question for me to ask. If I'm the provider for my family, if I'm the leader of this church, then I need to think through the possibilities, right? But here's what can happen with that question of what if. We just allow it to exist. And we allow it to fester out in the ether until it bubbles up anxiety in us. What if I lose my job? What if I lose somebody that I love? What if I get diagnosed with something? What if I get in a car accident? What if I don't get that job? All right, what happens if the global economy collapses? What happens if aliens invade? What happens if artificial intelligence becomes sentient and begins to take over the human race, right? Our minds go crazy places in an instant. And here's what I want to show you. If you live in that space of what if, you will fear that anxiety. You will feel it and fear it. So here's what I want to challenge you to do. That if you're anything like me, you're a control freak that struggles with anxiety, I want to help set you free here this morning. It's a very simple exercise that I have adopted, that I've borrowed from a pastor up in Dallas named David Marvin, who said the issue with anxiety and the what if is that we allow the what if just to sit there. And we never answer the question, what if? And so what Marvin challenges us to do is what I want to challenge you to do. Answer that question. Answer the what if. And here's how I want you to do it. You might need to write this down. This is a very specific equation. What if, then I would, but God will? What if, then I would, but God will? So let's practice this a little bit together. What if I lose my job? Then I would be devastated. Then I might have to make some lifestyle changes. I might have to sell a house. I might have to sell a car. I'd probably have to redo my resume. I'd probably have to go to a bunch of interviews. I might get rejected by some of them. And then, you know what? I might end up having to take a job for less pay that I don't like as much for a season. But God will provide. But God has promised me that man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. And because he has promised those things to me, I know he will be with me. What if, then I would, but God will? What if I get sick? What if I have something wrong with my body? Well, then I would have to get treatment. Then I might experience some physical pain. Then it might cause a lot of stress. I might have to leave work for a while, but God will be my great physician. But God has promised me that he loves me and that he is with me even in the darkest of days. And I know that because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross and the empty tomb, that if this disease ends in death, it is for my good because I get to go see him. What if, then I would, but God will? I really want you to play that out because here's what you find when you do that equation. God gets the final say. It starts with a hypothetical of I'm so worried, I'm so scared because I'm not in control. And it ends with this subtle reminder that God is in control and you are not. This is a story, a lesson that the disciples had to learn in a tough way in Mark chapter 4. So Mark chapter 4, Jesus is beginning his earthly ministry. He has his disciples, his friends, those that are learning from him. And he gives them almost this test to see if they can trust him even when their life seems chaotic. To see that he has the final word and they don't. Mark chapter 4, we'll start in verse 35. It says, on that day when evening had come, Jesus said to the disciples, let us go across to the other side. And leaving the crowd, they took with him them in the boat just as he was, and the other boats were with him. And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so that the boat was already filling. But Jesus was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And the disciples woke him up and said, teacher, don't you care that we are perishing? And Jesus awoke, and he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, be still. And the wind ceased. And there was a great calm, and he said to them, why are you so afraid? Have you still no faith? And they were filled with great fear. And they said to one another, who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him? Now, this is a story of a miracle. We're told that multiple other boats witnessed that this actually happened. Jesus stilled a storm, but it's a lesson for you and me in control. A few things to see here. One, did you see that Jesus led them into the storm? Verse 35, Jesus, they're on the other side of the sea, and he says to the disciples, hey, let's go to the other side. Now, this seems very minor, but here's what we know about Jesus. We know that Jesus was both fully God and fully man. He was fully man. He experienced emotional and physical pain just like you and I do. But he was also fully God, fully divine, which means that Jesus knew the weather. So when Jesus says, hey, let's get into this boat and go across the sea, he knew what was coming. He knew that they were going to enter into a situation where they would feel out of control and test to see if Jesus was in control, which says this to me. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, God may allow a situation or a season to enter into your life to show that he is in control. Let me say that again. Sometimes, not always, God may allow a situation, a season to enter into your life to show that he is in control and you are not. Now, hear me clearly. I'm not saying that God causes bad things to teach you a lesson. I do not believe that to be true. That's not the character of our God. But what I do believe is that when Jesus here allows them to go and leads them to go to the other side, that may happen for us as well. That if your life feels chaotic right now, maybe Jesus is beckoning to you to come and trust and have faith in him, even when it doesn't make sense. That's the first thing to see, that Jesus leads them into the storm. The second thing isn't going to be earth-shattering for you, but you need to hear it. God is with you in the storm. I don't know what kind of storm you're facing. I don't know if you lost a loved one, if you're dealing with financial stuff, if you're dealing with relationship with stuff. I don't know what kind of storm you're going through, but maybe all you need to hear today is God is with you. And again, you've heard that before. You know that to be true, but I really want you to experience what that means, that God is with you in the storm, even if he doesn't feel close. Because notice, the disciples are freaking out. They're taking on water. They feel like they're going to die. And where's Jesus? Nowhere to be found. And so they rush down and they find him sleeping on a cushion. Let's step over here. Bad Bible joke time. You ready? How does Jesus fall asleep? He counts sheep. Okay, back to the story. He's asleep. And like, Jesus, we don't feel you. Don't you care about us? They wake him up. He never left him. And he never leaves you. God has never left you. God has never forsaken for you. And even if you feel like your life is completely chaotic right now, he is with you, he is for you, and he loves you. I want you to feel that. And then I want you to know this. The third thing we see is that Jesus speaks peace over the storm. He speaks peace over the chaos. Right when the disciples think that everything is out of control, Jesus speaks peace over it. And I believe he wants to speak peace over your situation too. That God's desire is not for you to have an out of control life, but God's desire is also not for you to control it. Instead, it's to lean into him and to see that he has power over everything, over your life, over your situation, over even the weather. He is in control and you are not. And listen, that's a tough pill to swallow. When you really begin to realize that no matter how much influence you have, no matter how much power you have, no matter how much money you have, no matter how many people report to you, you are not in control. You're not in control of the global economy. You're not in control of politics. You're not even in control of what your children decide to do. You're not in control of any of those things. And I want to give you a truth that might help set you free. And I want that truth to be that you are not in control and that God is. And here's what I know, is that the longer you live as if you are in control, the more it's going to hurt you later on. Because living as if you are in control is living a lie. Living as if you do the right things and you live the right life, then everything will go right. That is living a lie. And if you live that way long enough, it's going to catch up to you. Any lie that we live into eventually catches up to us. I think about it this way. I could pretend, I could live into a lie for just a week or two. I'm going to be a billionaire. Okay, sounds kind of nice. All right? For a week or two, I'm going to pretend to be a billionaire. So what am I going to do? I'm going to eat at the best restaurants. I'm going to take really nice vacations. It's going to be private, so I won't have to show up to the airport 6 hours early. All right, I'm going to live like, I'm going to fill up my tank of gas, right? I'm going to be a billionaire. But eventually that credit card bill is going to catch up to me. And I'm going to realize all along that I was living a lie. So what does that look like? Well, it means you could go to the right school. You could land the right job. You could climb to the top of the corporate empire. You could invest well. You could save well. You could be on the verge of retirement, and then bam, the stock market crashes out of your control. Or maybe you could raise your kids right. You could bring them to church every week. You could pray with and for them. You can bring them to vacation Bible schools, tell them Bible stories. And the moment they leave your house, they walk away from the faith too. Parent, hear me, that's out of your control. Or you could eat all the right food. Haven't had a carb since 1998, right? Like kale-infused tofu is your only snack. You could do all of that. You could go to the gym 8 times a week. Take all your supplements, do your yearly checkup. And then bam, you walk outside, get hit by a bus. You realize very quickly that you were never in control. You realize very quickly that life is fragile and that our lives and everyone's life is in God's hand. You are not in control of the world, but you are in control of something. So when people come to me for counseling, and I'm open for that if you need to meet and talk about something, about a relationship issue, about a difficulty at work, whatever it is, I'm happy to sit down and meet with you, but I'm gonna give you a spoiler alert. Here's what I'm gonna tell you to do. Control what you can control. That's what I'm gonna tell you. You can't control your boss, you can't control your coworker, you can't control your spouse, hello, you can't control any of those people. Control what you can control. Well, what can you control? It's very simple. It's a gift of the Spirit. It's called self-control. Here's what 1 Timothy 1:7 says. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and of love and of self-control. You can control yourself. You've probably heard the saying before, and I believe it to be true, that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. Life is 10% what you cannot control and 90% what you can, which is how you respond to it. That's why that 10%, those uncontrollable things can happen to 2 completely different people, and they go 2 completely different pathways. Why? Because it's how they choose to control themselves. Listen, you have control over your emotions. You have control over your thoughts. You know what else you have control over? Your praise. You can't control health outcomes. You can't control losing a loved one, but you can control praise. You can control using worship as your weapon in the midst of a storm. You can't control a lot in this world, but you can control your prayer. Listen, people could be stealing all of your time, but you can steal time away to be connected to your Creator, to talk to the one who actually is control. You can control your prayer. You can't control a lot, but you can control your intake. Am I gonna wake up every morning just mad and angry and anxious at all the things that I can't control that I'm seeing in the news, that I'm seeing on social media? Or instead, am I gonna open an intake and feast on the Word of God? You have that control. And for control freaks like me, let me tell you the number one thing that you have to control. You can control your surrender. You can control waking up every day and saying, God, this day is yours, it's not mine. I acknowledge that a storm may come, but I also acknowledge that you have power to speak peace over it. So here's your homework. Whether you're a control freak like me or whether just on occasion you have some controlling tendencies, I want each and every one of us this week as an experiment at our community of Loft, I want you to pray a prayer each morning. Okay, very simple prayer. There's two very simple ones I'm gonna give to you that you can memorize. The third is for the overachievers, but the first two you can all do very easily. Okay, and here's what I wanna challenge you to do. Before you check email, before you wake up and begin thinking about your to-do list, all the things you have to get done that week, before you check social media, before you do anything, commit that day to the one who is in control. So we're gonna wrap up with this. 3 different prayers. Maybe you need to write them down. The first one is a very simple prayer, and it's an adaptation of a part of the Lord's Prayer. What would it look like that before your feet hit the ground every morning, you prayed this prayer? God, today, let your will be done and not mine. God, let your will be done today, not mine. Now, here's the thing about this prayer. God's will is gonna be done no matter whether you pray this or not. Right? If sweet Miss Sally here prays, God, your will be done, he's not gonna say magically, oh, because Sally said it, I'm gonna do that. That's not how God works, right? God's will is gonna be done. So why pray this prayer? It's not to ask God to do something for him, it's to ask something to do in your heart. Because when you say, hey, God, I'm asking for your will to be done, not my own, then you are tuning your heart to the rhythms of the universe to say, God's will is going to be done, and I need to get on board with it. God, let your will be done, not mine today. The second prayer is going to be familiar to some of us, many of us, in fact, in the recovery community. So you've probably heard it before, it's the Serenity Prayer. I think it's one of the most beautiful prayers written in the English language. Here's what it says: God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. What would it look like to pray that each morning? Say, God, I know that there are some things, in fact, many things that are beyond my control. But I know that you have blessed me with dominion and that I have a little bit of a sphere of influence, mostly over myself, and I can control some things. God, help me to know the difference between the two and to trust you all the more in it. The last one's for our overachievers, and it's where we'll close. It's a passage from Psalm 46. And what I want you to hear in this passage is both the power of God to speak peace over our storms, to be in control of everything, but also the intimacy with which he loves us. We're gonna be putting this out on social media as a screensaver for your phone. So this might be a good one for you to grab later on in the week when that comes out, and just read it as your alarm goes off each morning. But we'll close with this passage. It says, God is our refuge and our strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, the mountains quake with their surging. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Listen to this. Nations are in uproar. Does that sound familiar? Kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice and the earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Let me pray for us. God, we thank you for the reminder of that psalm. That when our world seems chaotic, when our world seems out of control, that you speak a word and bring order into chaos. God, we thank you that you hold that much power, but because of Jesus, his life, death, and resurrection, that we have an intimacy with you. God, we thank you that through his blood, we can talk to the one who controls the universe. So, Father, for all of us who struggle with control, I pray that this week we can remember that our life as Christians is to submit to you, to surrender our wills, to surrender our plans, to surrender our very lives at the foot of the cross. God, and I pray that as we surrender more and more, that you'll speak peace over our storms. God, we thank you that you control the universe, but you also know our personal storms. And we thank you for the one who spoke peace and still speaks peace. Jesus Christ our Lord, and it's in his name that we pray. Amen.